Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today I have an exciting video for you. Today we're gonna discuss a little bit about how did I develop this image and what did I had to do to kind of get the the settings, the kind of everything you need to do in order for you to achieve something like this in DeFi. I've been playing a lot with new rendering engines for the last month. I was playing with Enscape, and I do think that Enscape is one of the best resources out there for the conceptual phase, just because it connects so well with Revit or Archicad. So if you're coming from a BIM environment where you are a designer or an architect or an architecture firm that they haven't really embraced the SketchUp or Rhino yet, or you guys do still very few projects in that environment, but you still need a powerful rendering engine that could work really good in a BIM software and can be very handy whenever it comes to modifications. I know, like, every couple days we might change the design and you move a lot of things, so something to really keep up with that is Enscape. The thing I love about that is that all the assets that you have in Enscape, they come into BIM, right? So you're able to control the trees and all those things in the BIM environment. So if you have a survey or something like that, you can really adjust the location of the trees. Something that maybe, I don't know if it's happening just because I use Archicad, but it's still a little clunky in the live sync thing. It still takes a couple seconds, which is a little bit annoying. It's not as flexible, I would not say it's seamless as Twinmotion or DeFi. But now that I have already kind of got done with that Enscape phase, on that conceptual phase, I kind of looking at, okay, Enscape is amazing, but what if I want easier animations and I actually want more assets and don't have to rely too much in BIM, but now I'm actually looking to animations or really photorealistic rendering. Not that you cannot achieve that in Enscape, but there's other resources out there that I would recommend whenever you're in the schematic phase. Also, if you use Rhino or SketchUp, you can still use Enscape, and that's great. But I will also have been looking into DeFi and what assets it has to offer compared to Twinmotion and other ones. And I do think that these real rendering engines are really useful to get really good results a lot faster than it will take for us to generate that, in an Archicad environment to use really having to get too technical. So if you enjoy this, give me a like. I normally try to help architecture firms or designers to really improve their visualization skills, and lately we have been talking about real-time renderings and renderings in general. But for this one here, I really wanted to talk based on DeFi, and I've been playing with DeFi. I did this after 4 days of work, and I had no knowledge of DeFi. Like, this is my first rendering in DeFi after 4 days, and I have never opened DeFi in my life. So I thought it was a very good outcome for the knowledge that I have, which was none. I have used previous softwares before, like Enscape, Twinmotion, Unreal Engine, and it's definitely not gonna say it's the easiest one. I think the easiest one is probably Enscape, but it's very close to that, right? It's very easy to learn. You can get very good outputs right off the bat. Do I think it's perfect? No, it still looks a little animated. I still not 100% sure about how it looks with the foliage. Still is a little too animated. Also, the person looks a little too animated for my style. But for a real-time engine, it is expected. Like, whether I use Enscape or even V-Ray, depending on the foliage that you use, it might still look animated. So it's still pretty good results. I do think it can need a little bit of post-production to get it even more realistic, which I will probably be covering in the next video. But for now, I really want to show you a little bit of how I did this in DeFi and the process that I follow. So let's go with the first one here. So the first thing, and kind of what I have already been recording on my other videos, is the 3D model. So you always have to start with a pretty decent 3D model, right? And this is one of the things that I recommend, that I I didn't take this seriously until this year. So for the last year, I took a whole master's degree in digital arts, and it was mainly focused on 3ds Max, V-Ray, and Unreal. I'm actually still taking it, and I'm gonna be graduating the next month and a half. But something that I realized that kind of helped me also realize what I kind of want to still stay in the environment of architecture and not archviz was because one, I do agree that there are two different sports, and I kind of realized the importance of detailing. The reason why 3D artists are so good at the images is because they really do put the work on the details of the 3D model. Whereas a lot of times it happens like I will really not put attention to, like, if this has three-dimensionality, you know, to actually put detail to the rafters, to the outliners, to, you know, like, and even like now I'm missing a little bit of detail if you think about it, right? Like, but before my models have even less detail, just because the only thing I wanted was to kind of honestly just do the work for the drawings what we were showing, right? Like, as long, for instance, if these was not gonna be showing in the, you know, in these ones here, we're not going to be showing the elevations, I probably wouldn't model those, or maybe I will draw them or something. So something that did help me is kind of start putting a lot more attention to the things I modeled, and when I model them, how are they going to look as far as the rendering. So I would say definitely spend a few more hours modeling the right way, and just making sure, for instance, I would normally wouldn't model the roof, right? Like, I would just put a texture map on top, and it will indicate that it's a stainless steel metal roofing without me having to model it. But for the sake of the rendering to look more photorealistic and to have that two-dimensionality, I really needed to model. So I would definitely recommend that the first step to do is to really start with a 3D model. I've been watching a lot of Face Off lately, and Face Off is kind of like the show that they do FX, you know, they do modeling as far as the characters, and it's funny how it represents as far as the art goes, because you really have to start with the gut sculpt, and this is pretty much the 3D modeling is the sculpt that you create, right? Once you create the sculpt and you at least get it to a point where like you feel like it has enough detail, then I will recommend you to bring it to, you know, your rendering engine of use. And if you think about it, like, it's not like I put a lot of detail outside the site, you see? Like, all this is not, I didn't put any detail outside. I just had to kind of, you know, set up a view and really emphasize on putting the detail on the view. Like, if you're not gonna see the back of the house, I'm not putting attention to the back of the house unless I'm creating a rendering on that, and then I will get there when I get there. But my first view was this one here. And from there, I start modeling this scene here. Then I start kind of adjusting the lighting. I kind of creating interior lighting and all those things. So let me explain to you a little bit on how I did this, right? So the great thing with DeFi, so DeFi is that, you know, it has become really popular in the last 2 or 3 years. A lot of people have been using it. I just been looking at videos. I've not been using it. I've been a lot of focus on Unreal Engine and Enscape. Now, I'll be honest with you, when it comes to Unreal Engine, I really like the possibilities of it. I'm not as a fanboy of Unreal Engine as many people are, just because I feel like Unreal Engine main capabilities are on interactive and immersive reality, which I feel like 95% of the firms out there don't use it. When it comes to animations, I think that there's better resources out there than Unreal. I mean, compared to the user friendliness of it. So for instance, for me, DeFi is a lot better than Unreal for animation, just because it already has the libraries in place. It has the AI features in place. It has a lot of things that make things a lot easier for an architecture industry to work with. Whereas if you open Unreal, and I wouldn't have been able to make these in one day in Unreal, right? Like, with Unreal, it's because you need to know a lot of settings. If you want to set it up for Nanite, for Lumen, you need to actually download the libraries that you want to download. Sometimes you have those for free, sometimes you have to pay those. I don't know, I just find it like it's kind of like 3ds Max, where it has a much possibilities, but the learning curve is a lot steeper at the beginning. But for animations or renderings, I just don't see the major benefit on Unreal unless you are going to eventually do immersive reality or virtual or immersive reality or interactiveness with it, you know, changing the materials, you know, closing doors and things like that. When you're gonna interact with it and actually create immersive reality, then is when I see the benefit on Unreal. But if you're just doing animations, I do still think that there's much friendly, like about the same output, but a lot more efficient tools out there. So okay, so let's start with this. So with this one here, I started this is by setting up the camera here. So a way to set up the camera here, let's set up this one here. So to set up the camera, you really push this one. So you pretty much, you can navigate anywhere you want to, right? So you can, let's say you start here, you can navigate your model, right? Something I wanted to explain to you first. So I downloaded the live sync plugin that you can download for Archicad. If you are gonna use DeFi, you can use the plugin for, they have like 8 different softwares. I think there's Rhino, SketchUp, Vectorworks, Archicad. You pretty much with almost whatever you have as a 3D modeling tool, they have a plugin. So you download the plugin, you push this button, and it will automatically create like a file here that you can download. So it's super easy, and then you can save as and put it in a folder. But you know, once you kind of have the model, then is when you can start adjusting things. But for instance here, you know, if I wanted to create a camera here, like, you know, I would go here, you know, go through the model. Of course, this model was not with all these plans and everything. It was just pretty much plain. But for instance, I'll go here and I create, you know, let's create a view here, right? So if you create a view here like that, for instance, I think this is kind of looking good, right? Something like that, maybe. This is the rule of thirds. So let's say that one that comes in the line there. And you're gonna say that, right? Of course, that might need to be adjusted on a layer, but let's say you want that. You just come to the camera and then you just put add scene, and it will automatically add the scene here. The good thing is it saves the layer. So for instance, if I come here, it automatically changes the layer to what I wanted. Then you can, again, this is not a DeFi class, I'm just giving you a very quick thing of what it has. But once I have a camera, then you'll have the skylight here, and then you can really alternate the skylight custom. I prefer to use a HDRI. And then the great thing is, like, when you buy, well, you can get DeFi for free and you still get a few of the HDRIs and assets. I just bought the pro version yesterday, or today actually. And you pretty much have almost the same things, except that the pro has a lot more, it has the AI capabilities, and it also has a lot more assets and a few more things, but you get, the free version still gets 80% of what the software actually does. So I think the free version is still a good thing if you want to test it for a month or two. But yeah, I added HDRI here. And with that, the great thing is you can adjust the lighting, rotate the thing, right? You can change the temperature. I was at 221. Yeah, you can change the temperature. You can, you know, you can do a lot of things. You can add fog. You can add, you know, precipitation, strength. You can add a puddle here. I added some wetness to it. I added a human here just so I could kind of make sure that I get like a view sight, right? Like the proper height of the camera was right. So I put it like a person there. Eventually, when I render, I can decide whether or not I want to keep the human, I want to keep the entourage, or I want to just delete it and then add that in Photoshop later. Mainly because the 3D model is just not great for humans. Normally, they do look very animated. And then with that, you have the asset library right here, right? And you have plenty of things as far as, the great thing is like you have animated objects here. You have terrains that you can work from. Like if you don't have a terrain, you have HDRIs, you have a scatter vegetations, you have particles, you have materials, and you have models, and you have a lot of models. Like you have like 12,000 models. And the great thing is like you have almost all the basics that an archbase or architecture company should want to get, and anything you don't get here, you can upload it that directly to, you know, your 3D modeling software. You can download the models from there. That's why for me, a great thing for me here, if you have Archicad, is like having the model port, and then download any model that you want that is serious Mac or something, and then being able to translate that into here, right? And then you can bring it here. I just started using this, so I'm not sure if you can actually upload a model here. Maybe you can. But yeah, another way is to just go directly to your 3D model software and do it. But then, yeah, I pretty much set up the assets here. And once I set up the assets here, you know, putting a lot of plants, getting all those things, and then here you can have like lighting. You can add pad tools if you want, like actually create animations. You can add, you know, the scatter tool if you want to like scattering. You can add these, kind of going back to, it's kind of pretty much this, like materials and effects. So all that here. Add scatter, terrain. So yeah, I use a lot of the lighting, and as you can see, a lot of these things here that you push are lighting features. So I'll create, for instance, if I come here and I create like strip lighting, it will create one, and you can adjust it so it will go up, down. You can adjust the intensity, you can adjust the scale. The great thing about that is, like, I realized, is like you can turn on the scale and it will do that, or you can break the scale and just turn it in one axis, and I really like that. And then you can bring it back again and then go from there. I really like that. What else? I brought a lot of assets, a lot of lighting. For the interior, the thing with the interior is like I still empty, but with the interiors I added curtains, I added the lighting here, rectangular light, and that's pretty much it. Once you kind of have that, you kind of go back again to the view. It was still a lot of work because the foliage, you have to add a lot of foliage, and I added, along with the assets here, I added the fog, so the plain fog with lighting, and you can see that at the back. The great thing is that you can add the fog here at the back, which I think you can do that in Unreal too, right? Kind of getting some assets like this, but you probably need to buy those. I think I bought one. And you can also add these things here if you really wanted to kind of do it at the back. You see that? That way I'm not creating the whole thing by myself here. I added the fog to kind of add a sense of that. And the great thing about this that I really like about this is, like, once you kind of go to the camera and you want to render these things, in the channel section here is where you can get your sky mask, the ambient occlusion mask, the material ID, which I think that's very useful. Like, for instance, Twinmotion does not have the ability, I'm sure they will, but eventually, but they don't have the ability to generate a material ID mask, and that's a huge thing. And then, yeah, once you kind of do that, I added like some light here so you can get a little bit more light into the trees. And this video is just to kind of show you a little bit the workflow that I did with Archicad and Unreal Engine, and kind of show you the outcome you can get with DeFi. I would still think that you can get potentially something very similar with Twinmotion. Or I'm not saying that DeFi is the best tool to use. The great thing about the DeFi has is that it has an amazing library, and it has some AI capability, so you can upscale the thing. So for instance, if I come here, if I go here, here are all the layers that it gives me, right, out of the rendering. So if you're really into ArchViz, or you're really into Photoshop and you really want to do post-production, it's so easy to then later go and do your own changes here, right? And this is the AI enhanced image that you say it adds a little bit of sharpness to it. I wouldn't say it's like, oh my gosh, you know. And then you can kind of, another method that I have eventually that I'll show you in the post-production in the next video coming up. Yeah, so I created these images on Midjourney. So you see how the landscape, even though I still prefer this rendering here, there's something about the landscape that looks a lot more realistic and a lot more natural. And that's where I want to mix things, right? Like, I do want to keep the rendering 80% of what the rendering in DeFi gives me, but I do want to add a few elements of Midjourney, and mainly because Midjourney has a nice atmosphere when it comes to the landscape and the foliage. It does look like a picture, and it's not like a picture, but more like a surreal, like, it just looks nice. It just looks good to the eye. right? Whereas this one here looks good, but the foliage still looks animated, and some places still hard to kind of get. Still looks a little too dark and a little too light here. Whereas Midjourney is able to balance the environment, and it still does mistakes, right? It still burns a few things here and there. Once you kind of look into details, some things don't look quite right, but the atmosphere of it like looks great, and that's something that I really want to learn too. How to eventually some sort of mix both, where 80% of it is still the rendering done in DeFi, but how can we bring like some AI like renderings from here? And even though they're not exact, you have to be careful of it because some things are not exact, and the lightings is not exact either, and all it creates a lot more issues when you're bringing some asset from another picture that is not the right one. But that's pretty much what I have as far as the basic workflow before the post-production. I'll try to do the next video doing the post-production of this rendering, and you know, kind of how I did it and why I did it, and if I was actually able to combine the Midjourney rendering like and things into here, or you know, what would be the best workflow without really, you know, killing this guy that is already looking good. So if you like the video, yeah, subscribe, like, you know, I bring out the next video with the rendering after the post-production. So thank you for watching.